Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Skull Session Recruiting Podcast brought to you by BuckeyeHuddle.com. I'm Mark Givler. I have Kevin in with me here as usual. Just kind of a quick update today. Still in the dead period until the end of the month. Ohio State has announced that they're not starting spring football until after their spring break in the middle of March. So there's not going to be a ton of recruiting visitors here in the next. Well, there won't be any for a couple of weeks, but there won't be a ton of recruiting visitors really until after St. Patrick's Day, basically, to ballpark it. But what's happening, though, in the meantime is we're seeing a lot of guys start to lock in official visits. And so we want to talk about some of the key players so far. Not all, these aren't all of them. If you want a full list, please refer to BuckeyeHuddle.com, the Jeff Ruby premium board. We will have a list throughout the spring. We'll track official visits and we'll track unofficial visitors as well. I've got that up by the time this is posted. This will be up on the forum. So if you want the full list and you have any questions on guys we don't cover today, that's the place to go for that. But there's some key guys who have started to schedule officials, and so we wanted to go over those. And we're going to start with the 4 Ohioans right now who have we've confirmed have scheduled official visits with Ohio State so far. On June 6th, that weekend, 4-star offensive lineman Adam Guthrie, 4-star safety Caden Gebhardt, both have offers from the Buckeyes, will make their official visits to Ohio State. Very short drive for both of them, but especially for Gebhardt here at Olentangy High School. But so those are two interesting ones. That's kind of like the leadoff weekend, I think, of June for the official visits. Ohio State historically, I mean, they would do something in April, I guess, if they had to, but they historically prefer to do all these visits in June. So that leadoff weekend there, June 6th, they have those guys on campus. Some interesting stuff there, just because with Guthrie in particular, that's very much a battle. This is not a kid who kind of walked into this process as a lock. Ohio State didn't offer him maybe as quickly as some of the other big schools that he's looking at. And so Clemson has emerged as probably the biggest threat. So you've got Clemson now, Max Riley and Adam Guthrie, probably Ohio State's biggest threat for both of those. We know they are for Riley because he's down to just those two, but also emerging as the biggest threat for Guthrie. Kevin, just your thoughts on Guthrie, his importance to the class, and just kind of the whole Clemson angle, which Clemson and Ohio State had kind of stopped these recruiting. They were recruiting rivals for a while, like middle to late of Urban Meyer's tenure, early stages of Ryan Day's tenure. That had kind of went away, maybe here and there, but it wasn't as severe the last few years. Now here they are battling for a couple of Ohio linemen.
Yeah, exactly. And Ohio State, especially in the case of Adam Guthrie, new position coach with Justin Fry off to Arizona in the NFL, bringing Tyler Bowen. There's a lot of ground to make up, and we've been talking about for years that class of 2026 is going to be so important because of the number of in-state offensive linemen that there were going to be, and Ohio State's misses that have occurred. And you look at Clemson, and we obviously can go back just a few years ago to Clemson pulling an offensive lineman out of Ohio when it was like, it is your job to not let this guy leave the state, and he did. And then we've seen a couple others happen. But I think even going back to the Dabo versus Urban days, a lot of that was happening more in the South. Ohio State was invading Clemson's turf, and it wasn't like they were South Carolina kids, but Clemson was recruiting North Carolina and Georgia, and Ohio State was going in. They were going head to head on Atlanta kids and things of that nature. Now it's happening here on in Ohio State's territory, and it is so important for Ohio State to kick Clemson out of the state and not be able to get any more kids outside of. We haven't talked about him yet, but maybe there's a legacy out there that it may be a little bit more difficult with. But it's really really important there. And then with Caden Gebhardt, who you mentioned as well, local kid. You just hate seeing local kids that Ohio State wants potentially getting away. Secondary is going to be so important. I think Gebhardt's really talented. So it's going to be important for Ohio State to have all of its ducks in a row on its first big recruiting weekend with what this rebuilt staff looks like.
Yeah, and Clemson's involved with Gebhardt as well. I think Gebhardt's the threatening programs with Gebhardt probably number a little more than they do with Guthrie. Penn State's in there. So there's some interesting directions Gebhardt's being pulled. He's got a teammate at Penn State. There's a pull there, a former teammate at Olentangy at Penn State. And so there's a pull there. Ethan Grunkmeyer, their Penn State's maybe heir apparent at quarterback to Drew Aller. So there's the pull there. Clemson obviously being very involved in Ohio. So we'll see, Ohio State still, I think, is in solid shape there. Guthrie's an interesting one. I've never kind of felt he was a lock, but I'm curious how the coaching change actually impacts this one. This is one that short term, because it's a dead period, they can't get him on campus. There's not much they can do right now. Short term, probably just a little bit of uncertainty doesn't help. Long term, I'm not sure though. As we mentioned kind of at the beginning of the show, Justin Fry, a little later than others on Adam Guthrie in terms of the offer. Doesn't have the same established relationship with Guthrie. Had a good relationship with Guthrie, but not the same established relationship with Guthrie that he does with like a Max Riley or a Sam Greer. So that is one, and Tyler Bowen had offered Guthrie at Virginia Tech. So that is one that I think the coaching change maybe won't impact as much. Now, the catch-22 there, though, is that, again, is Guthrie was not maybe the lock that maybe some of the others were perceived as in Ohio either. So he was going to be maybe the tougher pull of the in-state guy of like a Sam Greer or Max Riley of that trio. So it kind of works both ways here. But I do think Tyler Bowen can hit the ground running here and kind of help things, because I think the late offer at one point kind of was rubbing him the wrong way. It felt like it was patched up, but I don't think a fresh set of eyes here, a fresh voice is going to be too big of a detriment in their pursuit of Adam Guthrie. So those two are on the 6th. Two more Ohioans have scheduled for the following weekend, June 13th. Linebacker, Cleveland Glenville, Sincere Johnson, and linebacker edge, Storm Miller. Again, these are guys that early offers by James Laurinaitis. Storm Miller is, as Kevin alluded to, has family there at Clemson and Blake Miller. Sincere Johnson, Glenville Pipeline. How are we feeling about the Glenville Pipeline these days, Kevin? It seems pretty solid, but Sincere's been out and about and getting some national offers.
That's the Glenville thing to do, and I know that the pipeline dried up for a while. Ted Sr. fell ill. Things just kind of did not, were not matriculating at Glenville. Fortunately for everybody, Ted Sr. had a nice recovery, and he's back winning state titles and their kids again at Glenville. And I think that Arvell Reese, seeing the amount of playing time that he is, and it looks like he might be one of the starting linebackers this next season, certainly does not hurt, because you like to see the kids you grew up with, even if they're a couple years older than you, have success, because it's a situation there now. Bryce West is still a young pup and hasn't necessarily had a chance to get a lot of playing time himself. Demarion Witten hasn't really had an opportunity yet either, but who are you going to take off the field to get Demarion Witten on there? But I think with Arvell Reese kind of carrying the flag right now, that bodes well with Sincere Johnson. With Storm Miller, yeah, you are dealing with the legacy type of situation with his brother being at Clemson. But we've certainly seen siblings go to different schools. I mean, it's not super uncommon. Generally though, we do tend to say, well, it may end up, he may end up following his brother or whatever. But I think that they're gonna keep pushing, and James Laurinaitis is a dynamic recruiter, and I think that that's something that bodes well. I think that there would be other positions, maybe under previous staffs, that I would feel a little bit more concerned about. because maybe there wouldn't be that type of connection there. But, James Laurinaitis still looks like he can play. I mean, he's not as, he may not be as filled out as he used to be, but he's still rocked up and looks like, we can sit there and take a couple reps. So feel a lot better about Sincere, but I'm certainly not selling on Storm either.
Yeah, with Sincere, I would be surprised if he wasn't in this class for Ohio State. I think that was the offer he had hoped to get when the process started. I also think, again, with, as you mentioned, the Arvell Reese factor, and it's not just that Arvell's there and playing line, they're very similar players. Sincere's going to be an inside guy. Arvell's been an inside guy with Ohio State. So there's a very easy connection to make there, a very easy kind of blueprint to lay out for Sincere Johnson at Ohio State. And so I think they're going to win that one ultimately. Storm Miller's interesting because here's the thing. Like, I've beat this horse to death, so I'm not trying to like revive it to beat it again, but the Miller family, huge Ohio State fans. Like, Blake and Storm grew up Ohio State fans. Blake did not grow up a Clemson fan and just was like the weird, like, go in the other direction of everybody else, type of thing. He was a big Ohio State fan. Greg Sajwara had his issues landing offensive linemen at Ohio State, even the in-state kids. There's a long list of in-state kids that were offered by Ohio State that did not sign with Ohio State during his tenure. This was another case of not being able to close the door on an Ohio kid. So with that said, I think that does give them a little more hope with someone like Storm Miller, because there is that connection there to Ohio State. There's that affinity for Ohio State. And one thing we cannot criticize James Laurinaitis for is his ability to close out recruitments. Did a beautiful job of that this past year, landing national guys, TJ Alford, Riley Pettijohn. So I'm giving them a better than 50% chance. I think if I had to guess right now, I would pick Ohio State, but I don't. It's certainly not a lock. I think there's a lot of things to sort out here. I think you've got this super talented linebacker class in Ohio, or you've offered a few of them. Are any of these guys going to turn into defensive ends? Are any of these guys, what is the role here for everybody? I think they're going to have to lay this out, not just for Storm Miller, but I think they're going to have to do this for all these linebackers that are in on, is like, what is the plan here? Because you've got a bunch of offers out and you're recruiting all these guys, and it looks like you may take a relatively large linebacker class. So how do the pieces all fit together?
Well, what happens too with, Matt Patricia? I mean, we don't know how long-term that's going to be, but I mean, if there's more of a move to go 3 down and, and then you suddenly, what your roles are and responsibilities are with outside linebackers and how they are and everything else. And you could sit there and go from having 2 linebackers on the field to having 4 linebackers on the field, even if it's, there's a very thin line between what a smaller edge is versus a linebacker. But, you have to sit there. We don't know answers as to what type of personnel it is that they're going to want and how people are going to shake out. So, I think that's something I'm most interested in, and hopefully we do get the opportunity, 1st of March, and I don't mean like March 1, but early March, getting a chance to talk to the new coaches. And while they're not necessarily going to say, here's my playbook, this is what I'm going to do, maybe we can at least gather some ideas of how they see things fitting at Ohio State for 25 and beyond.
Yeah, and if you're watching this on YouTube, check out the channel, youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle. For Ross Fulton did a breakdown of Matt Patricia and kind of, we don't know exactly what he'll bring with him. Some coaches, you come from the NFL, sometimes NFL guys leave some stuff in the NFL for various reasons. So we can't exactly just copy and paste what he did in the NFL, but Ross does do a nice job of kind of getting a glimpse into the mind of Matt Patricia defensively and kind of what may he bring to the table at Ohio State. If we do see more 3 down, I actually think that could help someone like Storm Miller, who I think has a lot of versatility. I think he could kind of be a jack of all trades. He can line up on the edge. He can blitz. He can play inside. So I think there are different aspects to Storm Miller's game that would maybe even benefit from something like that. So we'll see kind of what the pitch is once Matt Patricia is able to sit down with these guys. I'm sure these guys will be, they're doing their officials June 13th, but they'll almost certainly be back probably in March, if not March, in April, to meet with the coaches, to watch practice, to get another look at Ohio State before they make their officials. So we'll be keeping an eye on those, but those are the 4 Ohioans that are locked in so far. We got a couple more we want to talk about, just 2 guys that are interesting to me, at least, that have set official visits. And again, there's a bunch more. BuckeyeHuddle.com, Jeff Ruby Steakhouse Premium Board for like a more in-depth list. And if you have any more questions on guys who we don't cover here, but just 2 that have caught my eye so far that have recently scheduled official visits. You got Braden Robinson, a 4-star wide receiver out of Texas, is coming June 13th. He has scheduled his visit for. Look, we know the history of Ohio State and Texas, especially at the wide receiver position. They've been able to land some pretty big names out of the state of Texas over the years. This is a kid who is very high on the Buckeyes. He's got official visits set to Miami, Ohio State, and Notre Dame in consecutive weekends, with Ohio State being the middle of the sandwich there. Miami first, Ohio State second, Notre Dame third. This is a kid who's developed a really good relationship with Brian Hartline. And this is a guy that people down that way have kind of casually thrown out there to me as a guy, hey, this could be one they could pull out of Texas in this class. So I always go down there and say, hey, who are the kids who I'll give them a list. I'll go to certain sources down there and I'll say, okay, here's maybe like half a dozen guys. Which of these are real? Which of these are not real? Braden Robinson's the guy who comes back as real. So this will be interesting to me. Would be kind of a slot guy, gadget guy as well, but has tremendous receiver ball skills and route running and quickness. So Kevin, just, your thoughts on them, trying to pull another Texas receiver.
Yeah, I'll start with the obvious thing, because whenever we look at a receiver, we always look at the height, and and he's not that 6 foot, 6'2", 6'4" type of wide receiver. He's not Chris Henry Jr. He's 5'8", 160 in the database, and according to one of the services, does that mean he's really 5'8"? Is he 5'7"? But this kid can play. You don't get a 4-star ranking just because it's just a cool thing to do. From Red Oak, which is a South Dallas suburb, far. I mean, the Dallas metroplex is so huge that to get from one end to the other could take you a couple of hours, and we're not even talking about traffic. But so I think that's good too, because you're not trying to get a kid out of an Austin suburb, or out of maybe West Houston, which you're really kind of getting into College Station, places like that. I think it's a really exciting type of situation, because you look at having Chris Henry already in the class. You look at some of the other names that they're looking at, and I think that it's important to have various body types. I mean, you can sometimes get very one note in what your class looks like. A bunch of 6'1", 205 guys or whatever. So when it comes to Robinson, I think that it's going to be a tough battle. I mean, when you look at the schools that he already has OVs set for, with Notre Dame and Miami as well. I mean, this is a national kid. So let's see what happens there. Hopefully we get a chance to see him on Southern Swing. Right.
And again, electric player. You've got 6'5" Chris Henry. You've got Jaden Ricketts, who's 6 foot 6'1". Those are outside guys. So you do need a slot in this class. This would be a kid who would fit that really well. And again, this is a guy that I've been told by people down in Texas, like, hey, this is a kid they can pull this year. So we will see, but that's an interesting one for me. Definitely one to watch. We'll try and catch up with Braden here soon. Kind of get some more on him for you guys who are on the website. Another one, and this is like, I almost laughed at this at first, and this is going back like a year. I almost laughed at this. And then I've watched how weird college football recruiting has gotten over the past 12 months, and the areas where Ohio State was never able to even get in on a kid, and now they're like getting officials or landing kids from certain areas they weren't landing kids from before. And so here we are. It's Braylon Womack, 4-star, big-time, top 100 type of safety out of Mississippi. He's locked in for June 20th. Braylon Womack has told everyone who will listen that Ohio State is a top contender for him. Their track record in Mississippi, like I'm trying to remember, like we went there for Cam Akers on a Southern swing. That obviously didn't happen for the Buckeyes. Like I'm racking my brain on Mississippi, other than like Corey Smith getting pulled out of a JUCO in Mississippi.
Scuba, yeah, last chance you.
Like, this is, but yet again, for the past year, he's told everyone who will listen, Ohio State's one of my dream schools. I'm very serious. He's visited. So this isn't just a random scheduled official. He's already been on campus. He quickly schedules an official. It's going to be one of his last ones, you would assume, since it's, the second to last weekend in June. And a lot of these guys are doing these June officials to make their decisions. So, Kevin, I'm not going to pin you down to like a firm prediction, but are you buying or selling Braylon Womack as a legitimate chance for Ohio State?
Here's where I'm going to toot my own horn and say that I did correctly predict way too early in the process that they were going to land Riley Pettijohn. So, and that was just taking a flyer. So maybe I will use my one flyer here on this one. I will say this. At some point in the process, Womack will be committed to Ohio State.
Oh, gosh.
That doesn't necessarily mean he will sign. Are
you predicting a Naeem Offord?
Well, I'm just saying Deep South. He's from
no one's going to sign up for that.
outside of Jackson, Mississippi, and we do know that recruiting sometimes with your Deep South schools starts in November, and that's not going to be to any fault of Ohio State's. I think Ohio State is going to go out and lay out a tremendous plan, and I think Here's the thing: it would be better if Ohio State could get a November official visit, in my opinion, than a June official visit. Just because, let's say he goes through with all of his officials in June and commits in July. That's a long time to hold on to a kid in Mississippi. So, there are probably people watching. Mika Hanna's probably having a fit right now that I'm being really non-committal, but you asked me for my prediction, and my prediction is that he'll be committed to Ohio State at some point. But I'm not
no prediction on signing yet. Okay, I'm definitely buying them as a serious contender. I like when guys kind of back up what they're talking, and he's backed up what he's talking when it comes to Ohio State. He's got 4 officials set right now. He's got Florida first, weekend of May 30th, it looks like. So it looks like they are going to be able to start officials. That June 6th weekend may not be the first, but he's got that May 30th to Florida. Then he's got Texas A&M the following weekend. Then he's got Auburn the following weekend. So you can go either way on this. You can go glass half empty and say, look, that's 3 SEC schools before he even gets to Ohio State. And the fact that it's Ohio State and 3 SEC schools for a kid from Mississippi, you can certainly play that. And I'm not going to argue with you. I mean, if you want to have that belief, that's fine. I'm not going to say you can't. We've been doing this a while. We've seen a lot of kids that fit that profile stay in the South. So not going to argue with you. But he schedules Ohio State. Ohio State's his last scheduled visit right now. It doesn't mean he won't schedule another one. But he scheduled the 3 SEC schools first and then Ohio State the 20th. I kind of like how that sets up for Ohio State, because here's the thing. It's much better than doing it the opposite, because if you get him on campus first in that month and then he goes to 3 more SEC schools, like even if you kill the visit, like you're just all you're doing is like setting the bar. And then all the SEC schools come in and, maybe some insane NIL offers get thrown around. I don't know. I'm just spitballing here, but
what's it going to take to get you to
what's their
drive
number?
up a lot with this car?
What's their number? Let's add a 0 to it. No.
Right.
But that's definitely like, I like it that it's in reverse. Like that he's doing the SEC schools first. You got to lay the land a little bit first, and then you get a chance there toward the end of his official visit run to drop the hammer. So I like that. There's also, look, if you listen to him about Ohio State, wouldn't that also kind of lead you to believe that this was almost an intentional thing, as far as like, this is kind of where I might be leaning. Let me have them go last and just make sure, like, there's some interesting psychology, I think, to this as well. So I am buying them having a chance. Like I said, he has followed through on his talk. Certainly Ohio State has been recruiting him very, very hard. Would love to see him make it to campus March or April for a spring practice. Obviously, Matt Guerrieri's been very involved in that one, so it's not like he's gone anywhere. But really, all these big-time national kids, you probably want to get them back on campus in March or April, just to get a feel for what Matt Patricia's defense is going to look like. Like, Matt Patricia is not going to drive this recruiting train. This is still going to be a Tim Walton, Matt Guerrieri, Larry Johnson, James Lord. Like, these guys are still going to be their star recruiters. And so I'm not so concerned that like these guys have to like become BFFs with Matt Patricia. What I am looking for, though, they have to get around him and get an idea of what his vision is for the defense. That's the only thing. Like, it doesn't have to be their favorite coach. It doesn't have to be their best relationship. That's on the position coaches. Jim Knowles, I don't think signed a single kid when he was at Ohio State that I can think of. But he was at least able to lay out his defense and his thoughts on scheme and things like that to players on their visits. And so that's going to be important here for Matt Patricia. Am I wrong about that?
No, you're not wrong about that. I mean, sure at some point we'll have a conversation about Matt Patricia, the recruiter or whatever, once we have data points to kind of talk about that. But yeah, you have to know what the scheme is. You can't go back and put the last 3 years of tape on and say, this is what we're looking to do. I mean, you can look at the last 3 years and there were tweaks along the way of what Ohio State did from year 1 of Knowles to year 2 to year 3. So
there were tweaks from beginning of October until December. There were tweaks.
That is true. That is true. I mean, it's constantly evolving and everything else. But at some point there are fence posts and what it is that you do, and you kind of want to know what those are and be able to recognize them. So it is going to be important. And we don't talk as much about junior days because it's just the way that stuff works now and everything else. And but it's going to be important for them to bring these guys in. And I think it's going to be there's one thing about what they say, and then there's another thing about what they do. And if what he does is come up on his own dime again from outside of Jackson, Mississippi to Columbus, Ohio for a visit to take in practice and see some of these things and have these types of meetings, I think that goes a long way. But it's again going to be one of those recruitments that if Auburn is told no once, they're not going to sit there and say, nah, we're cool, fam. We're not going to worry about it. Auburn is going to be a pain in the butt to recruit against down there because they're really going for it. I mean, haven't necessarily shown it on the field, but they've shown it out there recruiting that they're going for it.
Yes, they're willing to be very competitive on the recruiting trail. So we will keep you guys updated. Again, we're going to have a full thread on the premium board at BuckeyeHuddle.com. We will have an area for official visitors, and we'll have an area below that with all the random unofficial visits that spring up throughout March, April, May, and then, of course, camps in June. So we'll try and keep that separate so it's not as confusing this year. But yeah, we'll get the full list up. It'll be up by the time this is posted. So check it out there. You can ask questions on the board if you have any questions on other people, or if you have anything to ask about these guys. We'll try and get you. We'll get some more info on these guys and other visitors here. I'm going to do a written skull session here by the end of the weekend. So that'll be up probably on Sunday. So look for it then. And we will, again, continue to update things as these guys are setting their visits. Kevin, any final thoughts?
No, just be sure to lock it in with us because recruiting is getting heated up. The cat's getting angry at me that I'm not paying attention to her, but recruiting is heating up. Everybody wants to talk about a national championship bounce and everything else. We'll see kind of how things go with that, with the new coaching staff and everything. But it's gonna be exciting, and look for us to start getting on the road a little bit more within the state and everything else. And a lot of exclusive content here at BuckeyeHuddle.com.
Yep, we'll be doing some recruiting stops here over the next several weeks. We are also covering the NFL Combine, which starts in, I believe, 10 days from now. We're recording this on
I
Friday.
haven't even mentally gotten there yet.
Roughly 10 days, a week and a half. Okay, week and a half. The NFL Combine starts. We'll be sending. We'll be 3 of us there, I think, covering it this year. So we'll have full coverage of 15 Ohio State players at the NFL Combine from Indianapolis here in less than 2 weeks. And again, we'll have some local recruiting coverage as well. I'm going to hit some schools here over the next few weeks, get you guys some of that stuff. Of course, our big Southern Swing will take place beginning of May as usual. So we'll have that to look forward to as well. But appreciate everyone watching and listening, and we'll catch up with you guys here soon.